This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
You are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the newest episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. A big thank you to all of you out there that are taking some time to listen to us today. Forgive me, my voice is definitely a little bit off. I had a really long but fun weekend. I went to Cincinnati, visited my longtime friend Brendan Burns. I also obviously cheered a lot for the draft. I love that the Falcons got Kyle Pitts. I also really liked a lot of other selections that the Falcons did, as well as some other teams. And me and my buddy Brendan, we went to a Reds-Cubs game in Cincinnati, so had a lot of talking, a lot of drinking, a lot of having fun there. That turned out to be I would say a swollen voice is probably the way to go there, but definitely just starting to get things back here. Had a lot of tea, drank some honey. Tea and honey mixed together always is a job well done when you have a sore throat. So hopefully it doesn't sound as bad today because it was way, way worse a couple days ago. And I was really just sitting there praying that by the time Wednesday comes, this voice will be somewhat bearable for me to do this show, and hopefully it is for you guys. But thanks so much for tuning in. So much on deck. We're going to get right to it. We're going to start off with the Aaron Rodgers stuff. Look, I know it's crazy. I know people are talking about it all over, but I haven't had my chance to say what I want to say about Aaron Rodgers and the situation. We'll dive into LeBron and what he's been saying, what's going on with him. Is he even going to play again? I mean, that's something people are not even talking about. I don't even know if he's going to play again this season. People are talking about, he'll come back for the playoffs. I'm not so sure of that. I'm really not. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. And I'm also going to give out not some draft grades, because the whole thing on draft grades, you don't know how these draft picks are going to do until years down the road. I mean, sometimes some of them, they'll show us right away. Others, it's going to be something that we have to look. So I understand it. I get why people do draft grades. I get the whole clickbait, and it brings attention, and teams want to see how their team did. Fans want to see how their team did. But I'm just going to give you guys kind of some winners of the draft. People that I really liked what they did. Some players, some teams that got some players that I feel like can make an impact on their team right away. So we'll go through that. But let's start things off first with Aaron Rodgers. Look, let's dive into it this way. There are so many ways to look at how this Aaron Rodgers situation started, right? How did we get here in the first place? When something like this happened, when something of this magnitude happens, it's very rarely a one-way street. In other words, there are multiple reasons behind it, behind how we get to a point of wanting out of an organization that drafted you, that you won a Super Bowl with. How do we get to that point, right? It's not just a one-sided, it's not just a one-way street or a one-topic street that gets you to that point. Whoever's saying that, they're lying. There's much more that goes into a relationship like this. for it to break down the way it has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down from all sides. All right, I'm going to break it down from every side of this relationship, and we're going to try and come to a bottom line here of what the hell is going on in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. First of all, I want to start by this, and I know most people have mentioned this, but I sometimes feel like it's something that's not talked about that I do think needs to be discussed, and that's from the Packers. That the Packers organization, they don't have an owner, right? So the only NFL franchise in the NFL that does not have an owner is the Green Bay Packers. Don't make a mistake. That is a very big part to this story. So they are a rudderless organization at this point, right? Mark Murphy is the de facto owner. And from what everyone says, he's a really smart, well-educated, nice guy. I personally don't know him, but a lot of people talk highly of him. But supposedly, he's not the biggest people person out there. He's not a big people person. And again, he is technically the de facto owner because the Packers don't have an owner. So the structure in the Green Bay Packers organization goes like this. Mark Murphy's at the top. He's the president. And then Brian Kuntakist, I'm going to get that wrong all night, so just forgive me. Brian Kuntakist is the general manager. And then below him, Matt LaFleur is the head coach. So that is their structure right there, all right? You got Murphy, you got Kuntakist, and you got LaFleur as right there. So their structure does not facilitate the personality that is in the center. And that is Aaron Rodgers. So Rodgers essentially does not have an owner, right? It's not like the situation in New England with the Kraft family, where Tom Brady, in his 20 years in New England, would literally call Robert Kraft his second father. I mean, he used that phrase many times. They were that close. They still are that close. And honestly, I truly believe Brady would have left the organization much sooner than he did if it wasn't for the ardent relationship that Brady and Kraft have. Rodgers doesn't have that in Green Bay. Rodgers doesn't have an owner that can walk through the franchise at any minute and say, hey, Rodgers, whatever you want. What do you want me to do for you to stay? Rodgers doesn't have that. So while everyone says that this is a mismanagement situation by the Packers, I disagree. Do I think the drafting of Jordan Love might have something to do with it? Yeah, of course. It's normal. I get that. Of course Rodgers is upset about that. But this is a human being situation here. This isn't a mismanagement situation. The mismanagement is the cherry on top. The mismanagement is a part of it. This is a human being situation. There is nobody to coddle Aaron Rodgers. There's nobody to make sure that he understands that he is a very special person and that this organization is grateful for them. And that there is nobody that can take his side over everyone else, and the ultimatum is you're fired because you mistreated Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's essentially what owners can do and have done with their star players, right? That's not Green Bay. So I felt it was needed to explain what Green Bay is and how they are so different from other organizations. That's important right there. So now, you know that. Now let's add this into the mix. Let's add where Rodgers is in his life right now into the mix. All right? So when you add that into the mix, you get the answer of just married a beautiful actress that loves spending time in LA and California, not Green Bay. No hate to Green Bay. Beautiful place. She's an actress. You enter new possibilities for Aaron Rodgers with Jeopardy, crushing it as the host for 2 weeks on Jeopardy. And then you also enter the mix a new phase in life. At 37 years old, you change. We all change. This isn't just Aaron Rodgers. This is all of us. Again, a human being situation. You change in life. And now we go back to the Packers. And there isn't that structure starting from the top. And real quick, to wind back 1 second. Haven't we all been in a relationship where we're like, man, I would live in this city for the rest of my life, or I would do this for the rest of my life. Then you go meet your special someone, that girl or that boy, and they're talking about how they're going to move here, and you hop on that to move with them in a second. You change in your life. You adapt. You meet new people. New things happen. So when you add all that in, and then we go back to the Packers, and there isn't that structure starting from the top that is facilitating Rodgers being happy and getting through the rough spots that are his egos being bruised, and him feeling, what would you say, underappreciated. They don't have that, okay? But now, let's dive into this a little deeper. So you put all that into it's like a big mixing bowl here that we're at it. But now let's dive into this where what everyone else is saying. The majority of people are saying that this is all about the drafting of Jordan Love, right? This is all about the drafting of Jordan Love. Because a lot of people believe that once that happened, it was game over. And I'm having a really hard time believing that. I personally am having a hard time believing that. I don't believe that drafting one player is making Aaron Rodgers one of the greatest throwers of the football ever that upset. Now, should he be upset that they drafted a quarterback? Of course he should be. He has every right to be. And if we all are being honest here, we all would be pretty upset if that happened to us too. We all would be. Because he took the team to a 13-3 season and the NFC Championship game. And then not only did they draft Jordan Love, but they traded up to draft him when they clearly had other needs on the board that they could have fixed. They didn't just draft him. They traded up to draft him. So yeah, he had every single right to be mad about that. It would be much different if they were a 7-9 team or a 9-7 team and they were barely making the playoffs and he didn't look as good as he used to be and you could tell the decline was coming and they said, you know what? We still like you, Rodgers, but we need a plan for the future. We would all understand that. That's sports, right? That's happened to how many superstars in sports before? In football alone. Countless. So when you look at it in terms of Jordan Love being the whole reason of all of this, I'm sorry, I just can't wrap my head around that. Do I think it's part of the reason? Yes, of course. And also, this is another thing about Jordan Love here, okay? If Jordan Love, and Rodgers knows this, by the way, okay? Rodgers is a very smart guy. He is a calculated person. You know, he thinks about all of this. You think that the information about him wanting out of Green Bay just got leaked, quote unquote, on draft night on purpose? Come on. Rodgers had that leaked at the exact moment that he wanted it to be leaked. Rodgers is not stupid. And he knows that if Jordan Love was a good quarterback, was as good of a quarterback that he should be, and I'm not, because we don't know yet, but if he was as good of a quarterback that he should be at this point, and listen, just because he didn't go in the top 10 in the first round, he was still drafted in the first round. He was still traded up for, okay? He should be good at this point. Should he be the best quarterback he's going to be? No, of course not. But he should be showing a lot of glimpses of, whoa, this guy can play. If Jordan Love was showing even a little glimpse, if he was just showing glimpses during practice, during scrimmages, that he was a first-round talent at this moment and he can clearly ball, then we wouldn't even have a problem here. This wouldn't even be that big of a deal for the Green Bay Packers if that was the case. They would look and say, we drafted this guy, well, let's use him. Especially if we can get the amount of assets back that we can get for Aaron Rodgers. The problem is, though, the pick was not good. It was not a good pick. Right now, Jordan Love is not good. Will he be good in the future? We have no clue. Maybe he will be. But right now, he is a clear project. He wasn't even the second string quarterback last year. And Aaron Rodgers knows this. Guys, Aaron Rodgers plays with him every day. He sees him in practice every day. He sees him in scrimmages every day. When Brett Favre was playing with Rodgers, Brett Favre saw what Rodgers had. Rodgers is not seeing that. So Rodgers is looking at this and saying, not only am I still really good, but this guy that they drafted without even talking to me about, he's not. He is not. So how about I leave and all of these fans get to see the decision the Packers really made? Of course, that type of thinking is part of this. You have to believe that Aaron Rodgers is having that type of thought. But it's not all of it. It's not the main reason why Rodgers is doing this. Again, back to this is a human moment. Rodgers has other interest. Do you want to put the Jordan Love thing as the cherry on top? Yeah, why not? Because it makes it juicy. It makes it fun to talk about. It's much more fun saying they drafted this 19-year-old kid to replace Rodgers. And you know what? Rodgers feels humiliated, so he wants to humiliate them back. Of course that's in his head. But it's not the whole reason. He doesn't force out of a relationship this big. This isn't just like a one-night stand relationship, guys. This is a long-term relationship where they had kids and they had the championships and memories together for many, many years. And then you know what happened? The Green Bay Packers said, we're going to go on a business conference. And on that business conference, we got lusted into this person named Jordan Love. And we decided to draft him. And we drafted him without even telling our spouse. So, yeah, of course, Rodgers, our spouse, is pissed off about it. Of course he is, right? And not to make it any worse, that person that they drafted, that person that they quote-unquote cheated with, is still living in the house. He's still in the organization every single day. So, of course, Rodgers is looking at this like, they drafted this guy. Let's let him play him. Let's let the Packers play him and see how he does. Get me out of here. And then he gets to show how good he really is, how much he meant to this franchise, and how much the pick was a bad pick. You add all those together, that's a huge part of it. But again, it's not the whole piece of it. It's a human moment. You cannot make it all about that. He's married to an actress now. He killed it while hosting Jeopardy. And maybe he just doesn't love football as much anymore. Is that a crime? No, it's not. Look, people like to move on in life. They just do. They fizzle out. They're tired. They get tired of things. They want to move on to something new. Something that they actually don't know how great it's going to be, but it looks fancy. It looks nice. They might regret it when they get there, but they want to try it. Okay? Relationships, sometimes they look amazing. And then the next thing you know, they end. Jobs, you get super excited when you get that new job in Chicago. 2 years later, you're kind of tired of living there now. Things like that happen. Aaron Rodgers just married a beautiful wife who is a movie star who likes to live in California. So he sees his window. He's saying, look, if I can get myself to another team, then great. I'd love to do that. But if not, well, my wife doesn't like it here. I'm good at other things. I do have a Super Bowl already. I can pull the retirement card because I'm not coming back here. I can pull the retirement card and see where that lands me because I'm honestly not too mad if it really lands me into retirement. There's more to it than just the Jordan Love drafting. It's part of it. I'm not going to be naive here. I'm not going to tell you guys that it's not part of it. But there's much more to it than that. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, finish up on the Rodgers talk here, move into draft winners, which teams are sitting real pretty as we start to look forward to week 1 a couple months from now. We'll be right back. I am Kayvon Izami, and you are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kayvon Izami. We are entering segment number 2 now, which is awesome. Good first segment there. As always, give me your thoughts at Kayvon_sports, at GSMC_sports. Let me know what you're thinking about the whole Aaron Rodgers situation. Let me know if you think I'm out of my mind. Do you think I'm crazy for thinking that it's deeper than just a 19-year-old kid getting drafted in the first round? Why do you think Aaron Rodgers is forcing his way out now? What is it that's changed in his life that's making him do that? That's the big question, and I want to hear from other people, because a lot of people have the same perspective on this. A lot of people it was mismanaged by the management in Green Bay, and he's pissed off about it. Well, would it really cause just that? Because, superstars all the time end up being in organizations that are mismanaged. They deal with it. They go to a job just like everyone else. It'd be one thing if Aaron Rodgers' contract is up and he just wanted to leave because, he didn't like how they did things. But he's still under contract. So for him forcing his way out, that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal. And that's something that I truly believe goes deeper than just the drafting of Jordan Love. Again, is it a part of it? Yes. You would be naive to think not. But I also think you'd be naive to think it was the whole entire reason. Again, if this was a football thing, if this was a football thing in general, and they went 3-13 last year, he turned around and he said, "Look, this is nonsense. I'm pissed off. You guys are doing a terrible job drafting. I'm getting my ass hurt all the time. I'm getting sacked. You're not paying for the offensive linemen. You're not giving me weapons other than Devontae Adams." If you came out and that was the case, then I would say, you know what, there's some plausibility in that. That I totally get that. But that's not the case. It's not the case at all, right? The organization has already said, we'll capitulate to you, right? What do you want? You want money? We'll give you another contract. You want a raise? We'll give you a raise. You want, what is it that you want? Well, we'll do it now, right? There's no structure in the organization where now they're doing it. And you know what's funny is in the first segment, I used the whole analogy of, yes, the Packers organization made a mistake. Okay? They made a mistake in drafting Jordan Love, but should it have been a mistake that's going to cost them their franchise quarterback? No. I think it's multiple mistakes on top of Aaron Rodgers just wants out. He just wants to move on. That happens in life. It happens in life. They've won more games in the last 2 years than anybody in the entire league. Literally, they have the best record in the last 2 years than anybody in the entire league. But now all of a sudden, he's unhappy? No, he just wants out. And all these stuff about, Jake Kumerow. When the Packers let go of Jake Kumerow, come on. Rodgers is really going to force his way out of Green Bay, a historic franchise, because they let go of Jake Kumerow? These are just things that he can use because he now sees a window to use it. Because he knows, just as well as you know, and I know, that if he comes out and says, "Look, guys, it's nothing personal, but I just want out of Green Bay. I'm kind of tired of it here. I got a new wife. She's beautiful. She likes to live in California. I kind of like to do other things. I kind of want to dip." How would the fan base respond to that? I mean, you're 37 years old. You just won an MVP. You're playing at the highest level, and you're 2 years left on your contract, but now you're saying you want to leave us just because you got married? No, it doesn't work that way. You can't just say something like that, right? You would look bad. So instead, you're putting it on the organization to make them look bad, to make it look like it's not you, it's them. And to show you just as much, I want you guys to see how bad they messed up on their way out. Let them play Jordan Love and see how bad on their way out. Look, it totally could be all about spite. I just, as a human being, am trying not to go there. As a human being, I'm trying to think that Aaron Rodgers is more developed than to think that way. I think Aaron Rodgers is too smart of a guy to think that way. To think that all because they did was draft this quarterback. I now am so mad that I'm never coming back to this organization. If that is the case, then I'm wrong. And I'm shocked. Because I just don't see Aaron as that kind of guy. Maybe I don't know him. I've heard people say, well, look, he doesn't talk to his family. And I don't know that situation, so I'm not going to get all into it. But yeah, it's widely known that Aaron Rodgers is not close with his family. So maybe you could say to 99% of us, our family is everything. Our family is the most important people in our lives, and we couldn't imagine even going a day or a week without talking about them, let alone for years, months, however long he's gone without really discussing with his family or hanging out and engaging with his family. You could say, well, If he's able to do that, well then shoot, yeah, he's able to begrudge an organization and find a way out that way. Look, there is a lot of truth in that statement. There is. But we don't know the situation with his family. We don't know what really happened. We don't know what could have happened to cause that type of strain in their relationship. Just like we really don't know everything that's happened in this Green Bay Packers relationship. We do know that the management has made some mistakes. We do know that they've done everything they can to apologize over and over, like the ones that just cheated in a relationship, and now they're coming back to their main lover and saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I mean, it really is just like a relationship. It is. And as I talk this out with you guys, I totally understand why a lot of you think that's why he wants out, because a relationship is all about trust. A relationship is all about trust. And maybe Rodgers doesn't feel trusted anymore. Maybe Rodgers doesn't feel like he has any support. But that gets me back to the type of organization that Green Bay is. See, Rodgers never had that support. That's the thing I'm trying to get to you guys. Okay, this isn't a new situation. Oh, the only thing that's happened new is they went and made a bonehead draft of a quarterback. But how many times have they not drafted a wide receiver? I mean, they've drafted a defensive player every single year other than when they drafted Jordan Love in the first round. Other than that, all of their first round picks were going to the defensive side of the ball. So, Aaron's never had that owner that he can storm upstairs to the franchise, up to the top of the organization where the big boss office is, and say, hey man, what's going on? I'm not happy with this. And then, of course, the owner takes his side. Or the owner comes down and takes his side without Aaron even having to go up there. He's never had that, right? Because they don't have an owner. So this all nonsense of, well, they've got to fire Kuntakist and they've got to let Jordan Love go. Who's making that decision? Is Mark Murphy going to make that decision for Aaron Rodgers? I find that hard to believe. I find that very hard to believe. And that's something that we're going to have to watch out for. But it's just hard to wrap your head around that it's all about that. It just, to me, feels like Aaron Rodgers is ready to move on. But he's a smart guy, so he sees his opening. He sees his way to move on. And he knows that he can do it in a way that also throws some big-time shade at the organization. And if he does it that way, then heck, he does it that way because they humiliated him, and I put quotes around that when they drafted Jordan Love. That's kind of how he felt, right? So I just think he looks at the situation, he says, again, I got a new wife. I'm really good at Jeopardy. Maybe I can land that gig. I also, I'm a very intelligent person. I like to do other things. I just want out of Green Bay now. And if I can force my way on another team and keep playing football, then hell yeah. But if I can't, I'll survive. I've got enough money in the bank. Pretty happy with what I'm doing right now. I'm pretty happy with my career at this point. I'll survive. This is my only way out where it can somewhat look like it was their fault and not mine. Because that's another way that players have to look at this, right? You don't want the fan base to hate you. The fan base turned on Brett Favre. It ended up being all on Brett Favre, but they were able to do that because Aaron Rodgers came in and killed it right away. So they forgot about Brett Favre much quicker because they had this new shiny toy that they loved watching every week in Aaron Rodgers. We don't know if they're going to get that with Jordan Love anytime soon. Anytime soon. So if that's the case and Aaron Rodgers leaves and they're watching terrible play on the field, that rage is just going to go at the organization for letting this happen. Does that make sense? That rage is not going to be at Aaron Rodgers. Of course, some people will be mad at him for forcing his way out and leaving the organization completely. But they're also going to look at the organization and say, why in the heck did we draft this guy, Jordan Love? Why did we do that? Why do we not have Aaron Rodgers right now? Why do we trade him? It's going to be pointing fingers that way. And that's going to be a very fascinating angle to this whole story if he ever gets traded. Because another thing that we have to look at is, who wants that on their resume? Who wants on their resume that they were the ones to trade Aaron Bleepin' Rodgers? I mean, that is something tough to have on your resume. So if you are the Packers, front office brass, would you even think about making this move? Because you don't want to be the one. You don't want that blood on your hands. Why would you want that on your hands? But then on the flip side of it, you also have an asset here that could probably get you more picks and players in return than any trade in NFL history. Tell me if I'm wrong. Right? Name a trade in NFL history that will gain as many assets as Aaron Rodgers will gain if he gets traded. I mean, we're talking about 3 or 4 first-round picks. We're talking about 2 first-round picks and 2 Pro Bowl caliber players. We're talking about 2 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks. We're talking about the movie Draft Day type trades, where he's over there trading 3 first-round picks, and then 2 hours later, he traded his 3 second-round picks too. It ended up working out for him, but it was pretty wild, right? We're talking about those type of trades for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who, yes, is 37 years old, but is coming off the best season in football, right? Coming off an MVP year, looking like the best quarterback in the entire league. You don't trade away a guy like that, and if you do, if you're crazy enough to, my goodness, you better get a haul that is going to be talked about for the rest of your life. Front office, general managers, coaches, they don't want to be on that side of history. They don't want to be the ones who traded Aaron Rodgers. No one's going to remember them by their name. They're going to remember them by the ones who traded Aaron Rodgers, and you do not want to be on that side. So it's a very peculiar situation for all sides here. And that's why I think it's going to turn out to be a messy game of chicken. And whoever blinks first, we'll have to see. But that's why I think Rodgers could end up blinking first and saying, I'm just going to retire. Because I think he's totally okay with pulling those cards. There's no inside knowledge from that. That's just my personal thoughts of reading the situation. And that's tough for the Packers because they then lose this guy and don't get anything in return for him. But also, they don't have to trade him and they don't have to see him playing on another team in another jersey, another uniform. It's a wild situation for the Green Bay Packers. And again, Aaron Rodgers is human, ladies and gentlemen. He's human. He wants out. He's tired of the situation, and he's ready to move on. It happens. It happens with all of us. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are switching to the NFL Draft and Free Agency. Going to give you guys, now that it's all over, some teams that I really love as we look forward to Week 1. We'll be right back after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome to segment number 3. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Kayvon Izami. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on segment number 3, the newest edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast. And what a show so far! I mean, a lot of Aaron Rodgers talk, I know. And look, that's going to be how it is a lot of the places right now. You know, a lot of everyone's going to be talking about it because it's the biggest storylines. Now, we're moving into basketball, about to really take over. You know, it's funny how sports are. The NFL really takes over all the way until the Super Bowl ends in February, right? Then after that, we wrap up the Super Bowl talk, and then we go into NBA, NHL, baseball starting up, and more importantly, March Madness, right? That's kind of where we turn the attention to. March Madness, like the big old March Madness college basketball tournament. Then, right after March, it goes into all about the NHL again. All about the NFL again and the draft. And then now that the draft's over, it's all back about of playoffs, right? Back to the NBA playoffs. Who's going to win? Is LeBron going to be all right? Who's coming out of the West? Who's coming out of the East? Is James Harden going to get healthy? These are all things that we're now going to have to dive into, and it's going to be fun. I can't wait to talk more about that. But clearly right now, because of this Rodgers news, everyone's on their heels with this, waiting to see if something else happens. And my answer would be nothing's going to happen for a good while. If something was to happen, it's going to be much later into the off season before we see actually something happen, and if he possibly would get moved there. Now, we're going to switch to the NFL off-season talk here with some of the teams that I just absolutely love what they did, but I do want to say one last thing about the Rodgers situation, and that's this. And this is where I really don't like what Rodgers is doing. I understand what he's doing. Again, I believe, it's a human reaction. He's ready to roll. If it is more about spite, I have a problem with that. I think that's a little ridiculous. I think this is his job. Get over it. Like, honestly, if it is about just drafting Jordan Love and being upset about that. But I'm going to try and think that it's more than that. But what my issue is how Rodgers is going about this. So he leaks the information on draft night, literally hours before the first round, before Trevor Lawrence is drafted. I was getting on a plane at 5 o'clock, and I remember around 4:30, Rodgers, dropped this news to someone to get out. So for the rest of the time, instead of talking about the draft, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers. So it took that right there kind of made me a little upset because we're taking the attention away from those kids getting drafted. Obviously, it was still a great night. We turned our attention back to the kids once it started, but it was a hot conversation throughout the night, right? And then this is where I also have a problem with what Aaron Rodgers is doing. And And that is the way he's now going about talking about this, right? So what do I mean by that? He isn't talking about it. See, when Russell Wilson had an issue with the Seattle Seahawks, he came out onto the Dan Patrick show and said it loud and clear. He said it. He didn't leak it to some teammate or leak it to some former teammate or some media member that he likes. No, he actually came out and said it. And you remember, he even called some teammates out. I mean, he said loud and clear what he has an issue with. I respect that. Now, I don't think he did a good job by selling some teammates out. I think that was wrong. I don't think you should ever call your teammates out. But Russell went out and said what he had on his mind. He let it out. Rodgers isn't doing that. Rodgers is letting things be heard that it all started with Jake Kumaro, some wide receiver getting let go. Then it's the drafting of Jordan Love. Now it's that if they don't fire Brian Kunikest, then he's for sure gone. Or if it's they don't trade Jordan Love, then he's like, we don't actually know what is actually being thought in Rodgers' mind because he hasn't said it. And I think he needs to come out and say it. If you want out of Green Bay, say it. Say it's over and you want out. Don't play these little games where, you know what, if you do this, I'll stay. If you trade him, I'll stay. No. Just stop. Either you want out or you don't. Come out and say it like Russell Wilson did. He said it. The Seahawks got some time to talk with him about it. They got some time to fix as many of the problems as they could. And now everything's all good for this upcoming season. It won't be hanging over their head until next year when it could happen then. You just got to come out and say it. Now, that's my full opinion on that. All right, let's move on to this. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. Let's move on to what I like to call some off-season winners. All right, and I don't want to say it's draft winners because, again, the draft is awesome. I love the draft. I love mock drafts. I love planning out the draft. But what I don't like is draft grades. You want to grade my first round pick? Fine. You want to grade my second round pick? Fine. But do you really know how good that defensive tackle I got in the fourth round is going to be? Do you really know how good that cornerback that I got in the seventh round is going to be? No. You have no idea. You absolutely no idea. So I'm not going to judge a team based off their entire draft picks because I have no idea how they're going to do and they have no idea how they're going to do and they probably won't know for a couple of years from now. Some they'll know right away, especially the earlier picks, but others it takes time, and half of the point to become a successful draft pick is on the organization to develop you. That is a huge part of this, right? You have to develop the player. It's a very big deal. So instead of me doing that, because, this is what you'll hear. Oh, this weekend, the Patriots, they get an A+ because they got Mac Jones and they didn't even have to move up to get him. A+. Well, guess what, Patriot fans? If Mac Jones becomes an average quarterback, it's a bad draft. It's an absolutely awful draft. Oh, the Jets, they finally got their guy at number 2, Zach Wilson. Guess what, Jets fans? If Zach Wilson turns out to be just like Sam Darnold, or almost every other quarterback you guys drafted, well, guess what? It's an awful, awful draft. And Zach Wilson, by the way, has great talent, but is going to be in a division with some really good defenses and some very smart head coaches right off the bat. It's going to be tough right away for Zach Wilson, but I do think he'll figure it out. So the whole thing with draft grades, I don't find the purpose of it. That's my personal opinion. But what I do like to do, and I do this all the time, is because it is my job to potentially predict the teams, right? And how they're going to do. So what I like to do now that I've seen every team's entire offseason, I've seen how they've done in free agency, I've seen how they've done in the draft. Now I can really look and see who improved and filled their needs. So I go through and measure who I think has won the offseason, right? That's how I do it, by looking at what you drafted, what you got in free agency, what were your needs. Every team, it's so funny, and I love what NFL does a great job with this. They do, when the team is drafting, they do, and ESPN does this as well, the team needs, right? And you'll see like offensive lineman, cornerback, safety, wide receiver. And as they start to draft them, those will like come off the board. Oh, they drafted 2 offensive linemen. Okay, they're good. So the quote-unquote needs, which is helpful, so we all know, I measure what you got and based off what your needs were, or were you like a team that just went and splurged and stockpiled a position that you were already good in, a.k.a. Dallas last year, right? They didn't need CeeDee Lamb, but they went and got him. I'm okay with it. I'm just saying they did not fill a need. So that's kind of how I look at it to then grade. So when I was doing my research on all that, there were 3 teams that got an A+. 3 teams that I just think were outstanding. I thought the Cleveland Browns got an A+ for their offseason. I think the LA Chargers get an A+ for their offseason. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs get an A+ for their offseason. So let me explain why. Okay? Excuse me. Cleveland's already got a nice roster. Right? They made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They shocked the world beating the Steelers. But their back end was awful. They not only did they address their back end with their secondary and their cornerbacks, which is part of their secondary, they massively upgraded it. So this was a very good weekend for the Cleveland Browns, right? And in terms of addressing their issues, they got Jadeveon Clowney, helped the pass rush with Myles Garrett on the opposite end. They got Troy Hill and John Johnson. These are guys that have not just played in the league, but have dominated in the league. These are guys that are grown-ups. These are men, not boys in the NFL. Then you go get a corner in Greg Newsome, who I thought was going to be gone before they were up on the draft. I love Greg Newsome. I think he's going to be a fantastic corner out of Northwestern. Then they get a linebacker out of Notre Dame in the second round who was guaranteed to go in the first pretty much before some medical reports came out that he had a heart issue. That's doing okay now. Everything's fine, but that's why he fell in the second. And their roster is so good, they have the chance to take a chance on a guy like that who has clear first-round talent, just has to stay healthy. And our prayers are with him that everything is good with that heart issue, which is reported that as of now, everything is good. So you go out and get those guys. You get the veterans in free agency. You get a mix of veterans, grown men, just nasty dudes that can play, and then also the kids, the youth kids, the rookies that you are going to develop. You go get guys that can actually call play. John Johnson for the Rams, he's been their defensive play caller. He has been a huge part of the Rams defense. So you get a bunch of different types of people that's going to fill your needs, right? Their biggest needs were pass rush and filling the secondary. And they did both in the draft and in free agency. And you know what? They could have sat there and said, look, we went and got Troy Hill and John Johnson. Yeah, I know that they're safeties, but we technically addressed our secondary. So you know what? Let's just draft another offensive player instead of drafting that really good cornerback out of Northwestern. No, they stuck to their needs. They went and got that Northwestern cornerback who's a beast. So really, really respect that. Love what they did. Then you have the Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers, they needed an O-line. They have a rookie quarterback who looks like going to be a really good player, and their O-line was terrible. So what do? They go out and get the best center in football in Corey Linsley. They don't just upgrade. They upgraded with the best center. They then draft Rashawn Slater, who many people said is the most ready offensive lineman. Remember, Penei Sewell is the most physical and probably going to be the best in the long run. But Rashawn Slater, they said, is the most ready. Can play left tackle. They went and got Asante Samuel, the cornerback, in the second round. And then they got Josh Palmer, who is one of my favorite picks of the weekend, the wide receiver out of Tennessee, in the third round, who is a really good wide receiver. He just didn't have a good quarterback in college, so his stats were not amazing. But the guy can play. So you add one of the best centers in the league, if not the best. You add a really good offensive lineman, Rashawn Slater, out of Northwestern, and then you go out and get a cornerback and a wide receiver, all to build around your young, talented quarterback in Justin Herbert. A+. Absolute A+. Love what the Chargers did in free agency and in the draft. And then the last one is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, a lot of you guys are going to say, what? They just went to back-to-back Super Bowls. They won one. What do the Chiefs need? The Chiefs need an offensive line. Because if anyone watched that Super Bowl, Mahomes was running for his life. For his life. They needed an offensive line, and they needed one bad. And what do? They go out and sign Joe Thuney from the Patriots, one of the best offensive Pro Bowl offensive linemen out there. They then go and trade for Orlando Brown, Pro Bowl left tackle, give up their first-round pick for him. Genius, because they're not going to find an Orlando Brown with the 31st overall pick in the draft. They then bring Pro Bowl guard Kyle Long out of retirement. Awesome job then. Then they draft Creed Humphrey from Oklahoma, who can play numerous positions on the offensive line. The best center in the draft, I would probably say. They did everything. I mean, they legitimately have two elite centers. They addressed their weakness at linebacker, getting Nick Bolton, who I thought should have been drafted higher than they got him. These are playoff teams already that are really building their roster and sticking to their weaknesses. You know, the draft is a funny situation. Things happen in the draft where someone falls and it's such a big player that everyone loves that you want to take them. But sometimes you got to stick to your board. You got to stick to your needs. And that's what these three teams did. A+ to the Cleveland Browns, A+ to the Los Angeles Chargers, and A+ to the Kansas City Chiefs. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. We are going to take one last break, and then when we come back, we're going to wrap it up with segment number 4 and do some real NBA talk here. Don't go anywhere. I am your host, Kayvon Izami, and you are listening to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We'll be right back to wrap it up after this.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. This is segment number 4, the final segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast. So we're going to do this show, and then we'll do our Wednesday show, and then the draft will be on Thursday. So Wednesday, again, we're going to really hone in on the draft. We're going to make our predictions on our top 10. We'll actually give you guys our top 10. We'll give you a mock draft. I'm going to go through some of my best running backs, some of my favorite wide receivers. We're going to actually look more in depth of some of the deeper picks in the draft, some of the names that everyone's not talking about. Thursday will be all about the NFL draft, so stay tuned for that. Because that's going to be a lot of fun. And same with here. Look, what we were just talking about. And, this is the one thing that I disagree with Will about. And Will came on, Will McFadden. That was segment number 2. If you're just skipping ahead, go and check that out. You guys will really enjoy that. He did a great job. Follow him on Twitter at Will McFadden. One thing he said was he believes that when the 49ers traded up to number 3, they did that being okay with whichever quarterback fell to them. I disagree. I think that they traded up with number 3 knowing sure as hell which quarterback they wanted. I think they knew exactly the quarterback they wanted, and I think they felt they could go up there to get that guy. I think that they knew Zach Wilson was going to the Jets, or I think that they knew that Zach Wilson, they were going to stick with Sam Darnold. Either way, they knew that they could have gotten Zach Wilson or they couldn't have, but that didn't matter to them. I don't think they traded up to get Zach Wilson. I think they traded up to get one guy, and the guy that they liked the whole time, and I think it's going to be Trey Lance. Look, I know that's crazy to say, and it really might be Mac Jones, and everyone believes it's Mac Jones, and I would not, let me be very clear, I would not be shocked one bit if it's Mac Jones. But I still think it's Trey Lance. I think that Kyle Shanahan has always wanted to implement a running style to his offense. And I think Trey Lance has the highest ceiling in the entire draft. Now, he is the most raw prospect. He's not ready to go. And that's why they're keeping Jimmy G. That's why they said they're going to keep Jimmy G. Because Mac Jones is ready to play right now. Mac Jones can come into the NFL just like Trevor Lawrence and play tomorrow, especially in Kyle Shanahan's friendly scheme. So, if they were to draft Mac Jones, well, then they could trade away Jimmy G. And maybe that's what they're going to do. Maybe this is all smoke screens and they're trying to drive up the price. It could be. I just believe they really are trying to keep Jimmy Garoppolo for a year, and they're drafting someone for its potential. See, the thing about these scouts and GMs that you have to understand, and coaches, is they fall in love with the P word. They fall in love with the word potential. That word potential is something that they're obsessed with. They fall in love with potential all the time because they feel like they can get in there. If they get a guy with potential, that's all they need, because then these coaches can get in there and they can twirl it around. They can bring that potential out. That's how these coaches truly feel. That's how these scouts and GMs really feel. So that's why I think they look at Trey Lance and say this guy has the most potential. He might be raw. He might not be ready to play. He needs more time. But at the end of the day, he will have the most talent, the most skill set, and the most potential. So if I'm right, and the 49ers really do go up, and they really do get Trey Lance, well, then it becomes, okay, what happens at number 4? And it also brings up the question of what happens to Justin Fields. How far could Justin Fields possibly fall if the Atlanta Falcons didn't take him at number 4? So I believe that the 49ers went up there knowing that they're going to get one guy, whether that's Mac Jones or Trey Lance. I also believe that the Falcons have their eyes on one of the quarterbacks. So say their quarterback is Trey Lance and the 49ers take him. Well, then the Falcons might end up going the Kyle Pitts route. So these are some of the scenarios that we have to look at. But I fully do believe that the 49ers went up there knowing they're going to get one guy, whether that's Mac Jones, whether that's Trey Lance, or maybe that's Justin Fields. If they do take Mac Jones, then that's going to make teams like Denver very happy. That's going to make teams like New England very happy, because if they take Mac Jones, that means Justin Fields and Trey Lance are still both available at number 4. If the Falcons take a quarterback, well, then you still have one of those left, whether that's for Denver, whether that's for New England, because the Cincinnati doesn't need a quarterback. Dolphins don't need a quarterback. The Panthers, they just got Sam Darnold. They still could take a quarterback, yes, but most likely they're not going to. The Lions, they have Jared Goff. They're still trying to rebuild. So it leaves you to Denver at number 9. Would Denver take the last quarterback? I believe they will. I believe all 5 quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance, all will be gone in the top 10. If the San Francisco 49ers do what I think and they take Trey Lance, then I could be wrong and Mac Jones might fall out of the top 10. Because I think the 49ers are the only team that are very enamored with Mac Jones, them and the Patriots. So it could be to the Patriots' liking if the 49ers end up going Trey Lance, like I believe, because then they might get Mac Jones without even having to trade down. So that's going to be the interesting thing to see. And then the other interesting storyline to follow is Kyle Pitts. If the Falcons do not take Kyle Pitts at number 4, how far down does he fall? Would the Cincinnati Bengals take him at 5? Would the Dolphins scoop him up at 6? What a win that would be for the Dolphins. Imagine if the Dolphins traded down, got an extra first-round pick, and still got the best overall prospect in this draft other than Trevor Lawrence and Kyle Pitts. I mean, that would be the GM of the year right there in Chris Grier. That would just be absolutely amazing to see. So those are a couple storylines that I will be following along as the draft goes. I can't wait for Thursday. Reach out to me on your thoughts, your opinions, your questions at GSMC_sports. We'll go through all the headlines. I'm a draft nerd, so if you want to talk about some 7th round prospect, please bring it on. I will look it up and talk with you. I guarantee you I already know it. So that's at GSMC_sports, as well as at Kayvon_sports, either way. Now, I want to flip gears here and talk about head coach Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. So, this is interesting. To me, the easy thing to do in life is to pile on, right? Anybody can pile on. This even goes back to school, right? When everybody's making fun of the one kid because, I don't know, kids are so mean, I feel uncomfortable even saying for what reasons, but you know how it happens. The kids are very mean. So they make fun of Johnny because his clothes are dirty or because he talks quote-unquote weird. He smells. There's so many reasons why kids are mean today, but it happens. We have all been to school. We all know what we're talking about. We all know what kids make fun of other kids about. So the easy thing to do is to sit there and pile on with the rest of the kids, right? Because that's what everyone else is doing. Well, let me join in. That's the easy choice. The tough thing to do is to stand up and put your arm around that young boy or girl and say, you know what? This is my friend. Back off. That takes some real gumption and real awareness, right? To do that. It also takes, not even so much intelligence. It just takes common sense to know you're doing the right thing there. Well, I am here to put my arm around Nick Sirianni, the new Philadelphia Eagles head coach. Look, it was a rough start for Sirianni when he had his opening press conference. It wasn't quite Adam Gase bad, but his press conference was bad. It was not good. he knew what he was trying to say. He just couldn't get it out. He was nervous. It was his biggest job of his life so far. He was nervous. I get it. All of his words got convoluted. It was all over the place. He's never been in that situation before. I mean, does that make him an unprepared to be a coach? I have no idea. We'll find out once guys actually get there and they actually start playing games. And we hear reports about him being great or hear reports about him being terrible. He just didn't know how to talk on that day. He was nervous. That's okay. And his first press conference, it happens. There's a lot of people that fail at something the first time they do it. I gave him a pass on that. Adam Gase also was a little different because this was his second press conference, his second time being a head coach. He's been through this before, but whatever. That's a different story. So I let him go for that one. I wasn't going to jump all over him. You're not going to judge a guy based off the opening press conference here. And I'm also going to stand up and back him for what happened this week when he had the guts as a first-time head coach in a very tough media market, Philadelphia, to stand up and tell the football world that 4 months before the start of the season, he was not prepared to hand the starting quarterback job to someone who was 1-3 last year, who was 1-3, had a 52% completion percentage, and had an interception rate that was trending toward 3%, which is very high, inordinately high. Okay? That's Jalen Hurts that we're talking about. We know he can run. We know he's an athlete. He had a great college career. And I'm not saying Hurts is going to be a good or a bad QB. I have no idea. I have to see more of him. But the whole point of this convo is, why in the world would Nick Sirianni come out and say, hey, he's my guy, when still 4 months to the season? You never know what happens on draft day. What if a quarterback does fall down to them? You got to keep it open to compete. If someone trades down, you scoot up, you get a quarterback, something wacky happens, it's the draft, and if you anoint him the starter today, well, then you've got to go back and revisit that. And look, and then you have to act like, you were a liar, you can't be trusted. I totally love what he did. People are sitting here coming at Nick Sirianni because he won't admit that Hurts is his starter. Why in the world would he name Hurts his starter at this point? What has Hurts done to be named the starter at this point? So I want you guys to listen to this. This is Nick Sirianni talking about naming a starter at this moment. Give it a listen.
Any starters at this particular time? We've been working with these guys for 2 days, right? We've been working with these guys for 2 days. My biggest thing is competition. It's, again, we've talked a little bit about my core values. It's my second core value. It's this team's second core value. Competition is a huge thing, and we're going to have competition at every position.
I love that. Competition. He was honest. He was trustworthy. He was saying what he meant. By the way, I know we all have short-term memory with everything, social media and all that, but that's exactly what was wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. There was no accountability. There was no competition. It was Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts, and as soon as this budding QB controversy came to light, it was all about the lack of competition and not wanting it. So the fact that he understands that immediate history of the Eagles and what happened to derail the whole Carson Wentz era, he's saying the right thing right now as it pertains to competition. I'm 100% on board with what he's saying. He's the new head coach. He doesn't know these guys yet. Yeah, he's watched them on film, but he doesn't know what they can actually do. He doesn't know what they're going to be, if they're going to be good in his system or whatever system he tries to implement. So it'd be irresponsible for him to say, this guy is my starter and we're going to rely on him. Now, if it's Tom Brady, right? If it's, that's a different story. It's obviously Tom Brady is the starter. You would just be lying at that point. But this is Jalen Hurts. He was a second-round pick and played in 4 games last year. And this is no disrespect to Jalen Hurts. Again, he might be an awesome quarterback. And at the end of the day, let's be real. Jalen Hurts probably will be the starter. In all likelihood, he will. But again, why back yourself in a corner for no reason when you get to keep all the options open? And by the way, I will actually, not only will I defend him, I will give him credit for having a pretty large amount of awareness, because this is the complete antithesis of what happened a year ago, as I just stated. So a lot of people are saying, he's wacky, he's weird, he talks different. I get it, okay? He's a little out there. He's excited. It's his first time being a head coach. But just judge him on what he's actually saying, and what he's saying is the right thing. He's not backing himself in a corner. That's what the media wants you to do. The media wants him to get up there and say, Jalen Hurts is our guy, and there's no doubt about it. And then what happens 2 months from now when Jalen Hurts is not good and he has to bring someone else in? Or what happens on Thursday if Justin Fields falls down into their lap at number 12? Probably won't happen, but you never know with these situations. So he's giving himself some cushion. He's sending a message out to his whole team saying, hey, competition is on for everyone. No one's getting passes. We are coming in and we are competing. And you got to love that. You got to love that. This is the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Kayvon Izami. I hope everyone's having an awesome, awesome day. So thank you, everyone, for listening. We're going to take a quick break. This is it. This was segment number 4. So we will be back on Wednesday then to wrap everything up on the NFL draft. Thanks so much for listening. If you can, subscribe to the show. Follow us on Twitter, social media, all the social media out there. Go and check us out. Check out all of the other podcasts in the network. And once again, this was the GSMC Sports Podcast, which is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Kayvon Izami. Go and give us a like, a subscribe on social media. Check out all the podcasts. We will be back on Wednesday to wrap up the things, all pre-draft work, before the big night come Thursday. Have a great week. We'll talk to you then.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.